Hello everyone. As we move forward, a brief update to bring us all to where we need to be. First, bring your interview materials for your final paper information, as much of it as you have, to class tomorrow and on Thursday. We're going to take a part of the class time to work on this. Again, if you've not yet considered this, you had better start thinking very clearly about the end of class, or you're not going to do it. This is not a homework assignment that you can do over the weekend and slapdash something together. You know, again, I'm having to remind some of you that this is a 400 level class. It's not a class. It's not a 200 level class or an intro class or a class that's easy in particular. So, you know, we're going to need to really be thinking about this. We're moving into the home stretch here. So today I want to discuss part 10, organizational culture, very briefly. Remember the definition of the word culture, perhaps from an intro sociology class that you had. It's a society's way of transmitting practical knowledge, norms, rules, beliefs, values, and material culture, or the actual physical manifestations of a society. This also applies to subcultures or units within a culture. It applies to organizations, definitely. And we see the concept of organizational culture become a salient one beginning in the 1970s. Why? Well, there was unparalleled success by Japanese automakers. Now, we visited Japanese automobile manufacturers and automakers before in earlier units, but this is in comparison to the poor performance at the time of U.S. automakers. Amitai Etzioni, and your reading for this section, there's only one reading by Gideon Kunda, argue for three approaches to motivation that come out of the cultural environment of an organization. The first one is coercion. When workers or other organizational constituents, such as inmates or patients in an asylum, are forced toward a particular line of action. The second are utilitarian incentives, or money. And the third are normative controls, such as higher group ideals, group acceptance, or a strong sense of group identity. Concerns about organizational culture, the workers ceding part of their identity to the organization in exchange for being tightly connected with an organization, appear, however, to be somewhat of a paper tiger of sorts. Just as in earlier long wave business cycles 40 or 50 years ago, and the realities that wiped clean the pretensions and prescriptions of the human relations model, these more recent fads and organizational prescriptions based on organizational culture get tossed on what Marx would call the dustbin of history. When the harsh reality of profits reasserts itself, particularly in periods of economic downturn, then this quote by Kunda becomes important. He says, "Out of the ashes of discredited bureaucracy, stuck with metaphors of obesity and waste, familiar notions again appear, including laissez-faire capitalism and the survival of the fittest." Eventually, Tech, the company pseudonym for the company that Kunda was studying in his case study, was acquired by a younger competitor and ceased to exist. So, it appears that in periods of stability and prosperity, the ideas like human relations school and organizational culture seem to hold sway, but when there are economic downturns and the atmosphere becomes somewhat, we could call it leaner or meaner, then these sorts of ideas just go by the wayside.